The one that I like the best, and Tim says this one is not out of the question, and that is Brandon Ingram. And he says the Pelicans seem set to deal after their first round disappointment, and Ingram is the most likely trade piece. He's the right age and the right kind of player to be 1B to Steph, but it might be too much for the Warriors to outbid everyone else because it would take Kuminga, CP3, picks, and probably more. And they'd also have to max out Ingram right when the team that knows him best has likely decided it wants no part of that kind of financial commitment. If the Warriors go for the biggest swing, though, this might be what it looks like. Brandon Ingram, your thoughts?
I like Brandon Ingram. Again, I also think he would be great on this team, but he is one of those players right now where I think that the value thing of he had a bad playoffs, like, you know, he's not going to be that valuable, but at the same time, I think everyone thinks that. And so you have teams with way more than the Warriors to give up in order to get said player. Like Detroit can give up a lot. A lot of teams can give up a lot. Like, I think that we're just going to get outbid, and I don't want to give up too much for him. But yeah, we're going to run into these issues where it's like, I personally have said multiple times, I think we need a top 25 player. I think we need a top what's so-and-so player. But if I'm, then we have to be willing to do what it takes to get said player.
The bet you're making is you're giving up on Kuminga and hoping Kuminga doesn't turn into essentially what you want.
I think he will. I just don't think he's he's just not ready to right now. That's the issue, is that if I'm giving up him, I want a top guy, because I think he can turn into Brandon Ingram, like obviously not an apples to apples play style at all, but in terms of like impact and in terms of individual success, I think he can surpass Brandon Ingram. So I wouldn't want to give him up for Brandon Ingram, but at the same time, like, he's not ready to give us what Brandon Ingram's ready to give us next season. So, you look at, to even combat my own point, you look at some of these top teams that are in the playoffs right now. It's Minnesota, who have basically kind of almost like a mini Warriors, where they've thrived in the draft with Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid, Karl Anthony Towns, and then they kind of made their Andrew Bogut trade for Rudy Gobert, but they gave up a ton more to get Rudy Gobert. But it's like working. And then you have the Mavs on the other hand, who didn't really give up that much to get Kyrie, but they did kind of re-sign him for a good amount, and then made some mid-season trade pieces. Like, they aren't like, none of these teams are like that star heavy, I guess. Mm-hmm. And they're more like, they have depth 1 through 7. On the other end, the Pacers, they did make the swing for Siakam, but they have guys to fill out those 1 through 7 too. Boston, they're a different story, but I just think that I'd be worried about giving up too much to land said player. But sometimes it does take that much to land said player. So when you see these teams get made where it's like, whoa, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, and Kevin Durant, but it's like at the same time, it's like you gave up so much to get those 3 and you don't have anything else, and that team crashes and burns just like a Brooklyn team did with the same scenario. And it really does, like, just having the right depth can really go a long way. But you're still going to need a 2. You're still going to need a 2. Maybe do I retract a little bit on maybe like how good that number 2 needs to be? Like, that's the Zach LaVine thing keeps getting thrown around. Like, is it really like, does Steph Curry really just need like not an all-star player, but something relatively close to it to like, is he that good that that's all he needs? I don't know. I'm kind of, I just wish one would sign via free agency. We didn't have to give up so much,
No, but you got to bring Clay back. But Clay stops that from happening, right?
Yeah.
I wonder if Brandon Ingram has a little bit of that tight butt cheek syndrome, though, because it seems like he plays worse the higher the stakes. When they need him most is when
I saw a Phoenix series where I was so impressed by him with no Zion only 2 years ago, where it was Phoenix versus the Pelicans. The Pelicans barely scraped into the playoffs, and the series went to 6. Phoenix was supposed to be the best team that year when the Warriors won the championship, and then they get bounced the next round by Dallas. But they were supposed to be like the best team on paper that year, and the Pelicans gave them a little bit of a run for their money, and maybe that was a little precursor to how fraudulent maybe they were,
but they were also not expected to win, which maybe the stakes or the pressure is not as high on the Warriors. There's so many, even today. You look at the NBA playoffs, the television ratings, because the Warriors and the Lakers are not part of this playoffs. the ratings are down, and some of it is just because a lot of people have opted out of being cable subscribers, but I think a lot of it is also because no Warriors, no Lakers. So they're still, the Warriors are still one of those franchises. I'm hopeful that I've been a fan of his since he's come out of college, because I just have seen him as like he's a mini KD in a sense, but you can utilize his length, and he can generally always get his shot off, and he's a good mid-range player. Can he handle Draymond being in his, being on his back?
I don't think he likes
constantly?
Draymond either. Like I've seen. Remember that scuffle they got into last year where it was like Draymond like stepped on Herb Jones.
They'll be best friends.
I don't think Ingram
forever.
likes him that much. Like based on all the interactions I've seen since then. So